endangerment in the first degree. On or about March 13th, 2020, in Jefferson County, Kentucky, the above-named defendant, Brett Hankison, committed the offense of wanton endangerment in the first degree when, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to human life, he wantonly shot a gun, into the apartment occupied by initials CE. Count 2, wanton endangerment in the first degree. On or about March 13th, 2020, in Jefferson County, Kentucky, the above-named defendant, Brett Hankison, committed the offense of wanton endangerment in the first degree when, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to human life, he wantonly shot a gun into the apartment occupied by initials CN. Count 3, wanton endangerment in the first degree. On or about March 13th, 2020, in Jefferson County, Kentucky, the above-named defendant, Brett Hankison, committed the offense of wanton endangerment in the first degree when, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to human life, he wantonly shot a gun into an apartment occupied by initials ZF against the peace and dignity of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Mr. Foreperson, is that the decision of the grand jury? Thank you. Sir, if you would please randomly select a number. Division 13. Thank you, sir. The case will then be assigned to Jefferson Circuit Court, Division 13. Madam Assistant Attorney General, do you have a motion with respect to bond?
Yes, Your Honor. The Assistant Attorney General asks for $15,000 full cash bond for the defendant, Brett Hankison.
I will grant the motion and assign bond in the amount of $15,000 full cash and issue a warrant. That concludes the business of the grand jury sitting for Jefferson County in September 2020. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may be excused. I'm going off the record.
We have just learned 3 counts of wanton endangerment against Brent Hankison, who fired those shots into the apartment of Breonna Taylor, and that is it. That's all we're hearing from the grand jury on charges.
There were 3 officers that were being considered. Sergeant John Mattingly, who was shot during that raid on March the 13th. Miles Cosgrove also fired his weapon, but the only officer who has been charged or indicted by the grand jury 194 days after the raid that killed Breonna Taylor is Detective Brett Hankison, who was terminated by LMPD on June the 23rd. 3 counts of wanton endangerment for initials of CE, CN, and ZF. Presumably, these are neighbors' apartments. Remember that the phrase that was used over and over again by the judge reading the charging documents and the indictment documents was extreme indifference of human life. And then you go back to the termination letter on Detective Hankison, and it said those same exact words, displayed an extreme indifference to the value of human life when he fired 10 shots blindly, as the report said, the day of the raid that killed Breonna Taylor. But it's interesting to note that Breonna Taylor's initials were not included in the indictments. CF, CN, ZF. Those were the initials of neighbors' apartments. There was a hail of bullets, and bullets went all over the place, and it looks like Hankison's being charged with wanton endangerment for the bullets that went into other apartments.
Yep, and we'll get more on that, I'm sure, from the Attorney General, but as you said, Acting Chief Schroeder said it was a shock to the conscience, the way he fired his gun that night. We'll learn more about that. He's got a $15,000 full cash bond is what's being requested right now by the Attorney General's office. Let's go to Katrina Helmer. She is down right now at Jefferson Square Park to bring us the latest on reaction there to just one officer being charged in this case.
Well, Scott, Gil, what we noticed as everyone was listening very intently here in Jefferson Square Park to those indictments, you could hear a pin drop. It was silent as they were going through the indictments. And then as people started realizing what was being said and that it's charges of wanton endangerment for Hankison, Then you started to hear little spurts of people saying no, no, screaming no, saying that's not enough, saying this is not fair, saying this is ridiculous. And those are kind of the rumblings that are going through in waves right now through this crowd. This crowd, in comparison to what we've seen normally, is a small crowd, and it's gathered there in the center. That's kind of where they had the TV. They had some speakers in order to project the decision from the grand jury into the crowd. But it's fairly quiet here right now. There have been a few outbursts here and there, but people reacting in frustration, in fear, in anger. You hear the woman right next to us saying, we still have so far to go, that this is not enough, this cannot be enough, and trying to put together exactly what's going to happen next. So when I can hear kind of rumblings from the speaker up to the front where the tent is, listening to some of the leaders that we've been hearing for so long, for over 100 days of protests right now. It's kind of hard to hear, but there have been pockets too from people in the crowd saying, let's think this through, let's listen, let's figure out what's going to happen next. At this point, the crowd we were seeing some people kind of across the street in different blocks. Everyone's pulled in so far that we can see downtown into Jefferson Square Park. Something that is completely different from times past is the amount of media attention here. It's not just local at this point. This is national attention in on Louisville right now for this grand jury indictment. I'm going to try to see if we can get in a little bit closer to hear what some of these speakers are saying. So if I can toss it back into the studio right now, if that's possible. Sorry, I'm just trying to hear a little bit more of what's going on some of the sides. It keeps popping up here and there when it comes to how people are reacting. The news is still setting in, especially the fact that, like you said, Scott and Gil, that it was just Hankison's name. That's something that I do not believe sits well as we're hearing from different people. But I think the woman said it well, in that this is just the start and this is not enough. So displeasure, I think, would be the best way to put it, with the feeling and the mood here in the park. It's eerily calm and quiet, and at the same time you can feel an intense tension of what we just heard. Those